Let's start with the histology of lymphatic system. So first we know this is a lymph node. So lymph node has outer cortex and the inner medulla, and it has a capsule which is made up of dense connective tissue, and this connective tissue capsule only moves inward to form the lobes inside the lymphatics. And you can see lymph nodes are nothing but like a bean shape, and they are small capsulated structures, and lymphoid tissue mainly are the pieces along the lymphatic flow. They are nothing but the pieces along the lymphatic flow. And outer part has the cortex and the inner medulla, and the outer cortex has the outermost part which are having different types of cells, and the innermost part is called as paracortex. So first let us see the labeling over here. So you can see first the efferent lymphatics. It is nothing but where it is a site where the lymph enters to the lymphatic nodule. And next here the partitions, which are just nothing but the projections of the capsule, and this is the outer cortex, and this is a convex surface, and the capsule has collagen and dense connective tissue. It sends the partitions and inner medulla, and this is the hilum. So just above the medulla you can see this area, this is known as paracortex, and here you can see the efferent lymphatics by which the lymph gets out, and also here we have vein and an artery going in. So this is a basic structure of a lymphatic nodule. Now let us study it in detail. So here we can see lymph. So first lymph enters by the efferent lymphatics, and next it enters under the capsule, that is nothing but over this area under the capsule. This is known as subscapular sinus. So after subscapular sinus it reaches into trabeculae, also known as cortical sinus. So you can see these divisions, this is known as trabeculae, also known as cortical sinus. So first from efferent lymphatics to the subcapsular sinus, next to the trabecular or cortical sinus, and next to the medullary sinus, that is in the medulla, and next gets out by the efferent lymphatics. So once let us recall that lymph enters from the efferent lymphatics, next to the subcapsular sinus, next to the trabecular or cortical sinus, and next to the medullary sinus, and next gets out by the efferent lymphatics. So actually lymph node is nothing but the house for both T cells and B cells. B cells lie in the outer cortex and the T cells lie in the inner cortex, that is nothing but paracortex. And also we have plasma cells here, because B cells, B cells produce plasma cells, and the production of antibodies by the plasma cells, and also the percolate and also filter the lymph node so that any bacteria, everything can be get out. And the antigen presenting cells are also present, which are usually present for the presenting of T and B cells, so that T helper cells converts the B cell into the plasma cell, and thus the plasma cell produces the antibody. And next, lymphatic sinuses. So they are nothing but the interconnecting spaces which are present inside the lymph node. So what is this lymphatic sinuses we have discussed? That is subcapsular sinus or cortical sinus, all these medullary sinus, all these are lymphatic sinus. At the efferent and efferent lymphatics we have valves. Only at the efferent, that is where the lymph is getting in and where the lymph is getting out. At these areas only we have valves. So lymphatic vessels are nothing but similar to the veins. They also have intima, media, and also adventitia, and also they are having valves like this. Now let us understand in a deeper of outer cortex. So outer cortex mainly contains the B lymphocytes. So this is the outer cortex which mainly contains the B lymphocyte. So this area, this aggregates are nothing but the B lymphocytes. So they are arranged as aggregates, that is forming the nodules and the follicles. So the macrophages are present which take up the antigen and also attach with the class II molecule and express it on the surface so that the T4 cell can find it out and convert the B cell to the plasma cell so that the antibody is produced. So the immune complex antigen antibody is destroyed later by the macrophages whenever the antibody is produced. But what happens in follicular dendritic cells is they are having efficient antigen holding cells, that is they are having some receptors for both antigen and antibody, so that they hold for months, decades, so that the immune system is always like semi-activated state. So what is the differences? Normally if we have macrophages, what they do, just they present to the antigen so that antibody can be released and fight against it. But the follicular dendritic cells are special cells, like they hold the antigen and antibody complex for many months, days, or also sometimes for many decades, so that our immune system will be always in an active state. and always ready to fight against any kind of infection. So fibroblasts or reticular cells produce a collagen type 3. These cells are also present in the outer cortex. They mainly deposited in the layers and produce the architecture of the lymph node. So this collagen fibers help to make out the lymph node. Next we also have the macrophages as we described. Macrophages main function is to have phagocytes, and antigen presenting cells are only few, and dendritic cells are having only less phagocytes, and the antigen presenting cells are more in dendritic cells. And next we have the antigen presenting cells and follicular dendritic cells. There are no phagocytes in it and no antigen presenting, and they just hold antigen for the long time. That is the function of a follicular dendrite as we discussed. So this is just a summary. Now let us see the detail of B cells. So whenever the antigen is stimulated, the B cells are undergo the mitotic process. So they form a large follicle, because in the outer cortex, as the B cells are, as the antigen came, so the B cells are proliferating by means of mitotic division. So the large follicle is formed, and there are more stimulated cells in the center. And they are having a open nucleus, and they are light stained with the germinal center. So most stimulated cells are having open nucleus because they need to duplicate the cell and also undergo proliferation. So their center appears to be pale in color, that is light stained. This is also known as germinal center. So the outer part is unstimulated and containing unstimulated lymphocytes, which is also known as highly staining part. So if the germinal center is pale, then it is active, and if it is not pale, it is inactive. So let us see here, this is the unstimulated lymphocyte example, so it remains normal. But in the case of stimulated lymphocyte, that is with the germinal center, you can see it is like this. It is open for the duplication and proliferation. This is also known as centroblast or centrocyte. So next what happens is, the plasma cell is ovoid cell, and it is having a cartwheel shape and also clock shaped nucleus, and also it is having prominent Golgi apparatus and synthesis the antibody and also secrete the antibody. So by this the germinal center is nothing but is proliferated whenever an antigen is presented. So the antibody is produced by this process in the case of germinal center in the outer cortex of a lymph node. So randomly aggregated T cells are present in a deeper cortex, that is nothing but in the paracortex. So the T cell is also known as T cell zone of lymph node. So it has mainly CD3 plus markers and develop only when the T cells are present in the body. So if in Dijor syndrome there is no thymus, so there are no T cells, so that thymus dependent. So we can say this T cell, that is the paracortex, is thymus dependent area, and no development of deep cortex with the T cells. They are not able to handle the virus infections, some bacterial infections, and also fungus infections. So this is outer cortex mainly containing B cells, and this is the deeper cortex also known as paracortex, which is mainly containing the T cells. Along with B cells, if you recall, we have our macrophages, dendritic cells, antigen presenting cells, and also follicular dendritic cells. And in our T cells, we also have some supporting cells like macrophages, follicular dendritic cells, etc. And B cells are active only when it is like having a centrosome, or also known as centroblast, centrocyte and centroblast with a pale germinal center. Then we can see these cells are actively proliferating. Now T cell proliferation mainly takes place in the inner cortex, so that the inner cortex swell up mainly in the virus infections. So Bruton's disease, it mainly is seen in small infant boys, that is B cell is absent, so that there is no antibody, so that it is also known as gamma globinemia, A gamma globinemia, that is immunoglobulins are very low, and the outer cortex is not well developed. Because this Bruton's disease in which mainly the B cells are absent. So as B cells are absent, we know B cells are present in the outer cortex. So outer cortex is also undeveloped well, not undeveloped. And next, the plasma cells from the B cells reach the medullary area, which is nothing but the house of the plasma cell. So the medullary area is the house of the plasma cell. That is in the diagram we can check out here. So this is the medullary area where we can find the plasma cells. And next, T cells plus dendritic cells and reticular and macrophages are the supporting. So T cells, we know it is present in the inner cortex, also known as paracortex. So the dendritic, reticular and macrophages are the supporting cells along with the T cells in the inner cortex. And in the medullary layer we have plasma cells, we know. Along with that, the supporting cells are macrophages, reticular cells. And plasma cells antibodies go to the efferents. So by that efferents, so for example this is a lymph node. So plasma cell produce antibodies, and those antibodies are going out by the efferents. From the efferent it reaches the vein and reaches the circulation. So thereby our whole body gets activated whenever an antigen is presented. So our whole body gets the antibody, so that we can fight from particular infection. So here we can first important thing is post capillary venules, which are present mainly in our inner cortex. So inner cortex contains the post capillary venules, which are also having the high endothelial cells over this area, where they express the special receptors. So these high endothelial cells express the special receptors, that is nothing but lymphocyte homing receptors, which catch the lymphocytes which are circulating in the blood. So you can see this is a lymphocyte. So from one of the capillaries, you can see here the artery is entering into our lymph node, and there it forms the capillaries, and from venules it gets out. So at the site of venules it forms a special venule known as post capillary venules. At this they have a special high endothelial cells where they have some receptors which help in catching the lymphocytes from the blood. So what happens is they force the lymphocytes to exit from the lymph node, so that the lymphocytes get again back into the lymph node, that is their home. So they reach into the inner cortex. From there they go to the B cells, reach out to the outer cortex, and the T cells stay in the inner cortex itself, because we know B cells are in the outer cortex and T cells are in the inner cortex, or also known as paracortex. So they go to the efferent lymphatics later and fuse together with the fuse together and reach to the next lymph node. So all lymphatics drain at the junction, that is at the jugular, internal jugular and subclavian vein, and from there they reach the circulation and again reach into the another lymph node. So this is a cycle which is going on for the lymphatics. So for every 1 second there are 1000 antibodies produced by a plasma cells. If you remember, plasma cells are present in a medullary region of a lymph node. So what are the clinical points related to the lymph node? That is the T cell area, which is enlarged in the inner cortex because of mainly virus infections, and the B cell area is enlarged mainly due to bacterial infections. And the Bruton's in boys disease, that is a newborn, the B cell area is absent, so the antibody is decreased, and it is also known as agammaglobulinemia. And the Dye-George syndrome, it is seen in a newborn where there is a tetany, there is hypocalcemia, there is fungal infection, and the T cell area is less populated. And severe immunodeficiency, that is due to B cell and T cell area, both are lower populated. And the severe combined immunodeficiency syndrome, that is nothing but known as SCID. That is, you can imagine in a lymph node, the outer B cell and inner T cell both are absent, then it is known as severe combined immunodeficiency syndrome. And also there is adenosine deaminasin deficiency, where also here also both T cell and B cells are deficient. Nowadays we are giving the gene therapy for this. So virus and lymphocyte together are injected with the cell. Virus with our gene and the lymphocyte are injected so that we can treat this problem by using gene therapy. And lymphoma is nothing but increase in the size of a lymph node. So whenever we know there is a cancerous mass, the lymph node size is increased. This is known as lymphoma, and it gives a owl-eye appearance, that is in Reid-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So it is painless and progressive and like a rubbery consistency. So this is all about lymph node. The spleen histology. So spleen is a secondary lymphoid organs, and the primary lymphoid organs are lymphocytes which develop and mature there, and they are also educated, that is our bone marrow and also thymus. We know bone marrow mainly produces B cells, and that is B cells mature there, and in thymus we know T cells mature there, and they reach the circulation. So from there the lymphoid organs are settled, that is the largest peripheral organ is nothing but the spleen. And when lymphoid organs there settled, next the antigen is stimulated and the antibody are produced against this antigen. So the largest peripheral organ is the spleen. Spleen is in the size of clenched fist, and in adults the spleen weight is about 150 grams, and it is present in a left upper quadrant of our abdomen. It is covered by a peritoneum. So here we can check out the structure of a spleen. So this is spleen which is covered by a capsule, and outside the capsule you can check out the peritoneum, and the capsule is mainly covered by the squamous epithelial cells from the peritoneum, and this is the peritoneum. Capsule is mainly made up of dense connective tissue, and also it contains some collagen fibers. So first let us understand that the spleen doesn't have any efferent lymphatics. Then you can imagine that how lymph can enter the spleen. Spleen itself makes the lymph in it. So you can see this is a artery, this is a hilum of a spleen. Here you can see the artery, here you can see the vein, and here you can see the lymphatics which are mainly efferent, that is getting away from them. And also we can see nerves. So this is a first artery, so it branches to form a trabecular artery. Later it forms a central artery. And the next central artery gives the branches, that is nothing but it branches into our peninsular arterioles, and next peninsular arterioles, next they form the terminal capillaries, and terminal capillaries divide into splenic sinusoid and also splenic cords. So all this let us check out one by one. So spleen doesn't have efferent lymphatics, and the lymph is formed within the spleen itself. So the fibrous septa form the capsule and divide the spleen, which reach the parenchyma and call the trabeculae. And this fibrous septa along with the capsule have a myofibroblast that is present in capsule and also with the trabeculae. And it is contractile in function. They are having receptors for both epinephrine and norepinephrine, and they are mainly released in the kind of stress. So spleen, they store blood, and it is seen in lower organisms, mainly in dogs. And the human spleen is poorly contractile when compared with the lower organisms. And the splenic artery. The splenic artery is nothing but the trabecular artery. So it branches our trabecular artery. Around this trabecular artery we can find the lymphocytes, mainly the T lymphocytes, which are forming a sheet known as cylindrical sheet known as pulse. So pulse is nothing but periarterial lymphocyte sheet. It mainly contains T cells, and they are thymus dependent because this sheet is covered by mainly T cells. So middle this T cells we have the central artery, and the central artery next follows to form the lymphoid nodules, that is also known as splenic nodules, that is B cells. It is made up of mainly B cells, and they push the artery to the side in the transverse section. So you can see this is a B cell nodule over here. And next this above it and the artery passes above this B cell nodule. You can see this is nodule and the artery is passing above it. In the longitude normal section you can see like that. Now let us see the splenic pulp. Actually spleen has pulp. It is divided into white pulp and red pulp. The white pulp has the central artery and the pulse and also B cells. So white pulp consists of trabecular artery, central artery with both T cells and B cells. That is nothing but pulse. Pulse is having T cells, right? So T cells and B cells. And red pulp is divided into sinusoids and cords. So we have understood about white pulp. Now let us learn about red pulp. Before that, let us see lymphoid nodules are converted into splenic nodules, also known as Malpighian nodules. If you remember the lymphoid nodules over here, that is a B cell lymphoid nodules. So these are converted into splenic nodules mainly by antigen stimulation. They are having large germinal center, and they are present B cells which are present in the lymphatic. You can see here lymphatic aggregate, that is lymphatic nodule. They convert into plasma cells and they migrate into the red pulp. So B cells are in white pulp. So from white pulp they go into red pulp, that is to secrete the antibodies there. So the branches of central artery are nothing but the peninsular arterioles. So first this is the trabecular artery, next central artery. So next it continues as peninsular arterioles, and next they convert into capillaries of sheet of. Next they convert into capillaries, and around those capillaries there are sheet of macrophages, and they convert into finally the terminal capillaries. And the terminal capillaries may either drain into the splenic sinusoid, that is the closed circulation, or may also even drain into the open circulation, that is the splenic cords. So the splenic sinusoid and splenic cords together form the red pulp. So let us understand in detail of splenic cord, or also known as the cords of Billerith. So the splenic cord or cords of biliaris mainly contain lymphocytes, plasma cells, RBC, neutrophils and also reticular cells. So the splenic sinusoids or sinus are vascular channel, mainly they look like a barrel shape and they are having mainly specialized endothelial cells and also having a connective tissue bands around it like a barrel shape. So the collagen spaces which are present mainly between the splenic sinuses are made of meshwork of connective tissue and they are seen in open circulation. These are nothing but known as splenic cords. So the splenic cords are having the open circulation and splenic sinusoids are having the closed circulation. So what are the structures present in a splenic cords are nothing but the plasma cells, macrophages are present. And next, the spleen destroys the abnormal, injured and also old RBCs and it is normally the RBCs should be flexible. So whenever they are old, what happens is they can't easily cross to this open circulation to the closed circulation. So they stuck there and they can't escape, so that they are engulfed by the macrophages. So let us see that process, that is the macrophages are present between the gaps of the closed circulation, that is in the splenic sinusoid, so that they can't enter the sinusoid and struck. So the macrophages catch and engulf them, so the hemoglobin is broken down into iron and bilirubin and the iron is attached to the apoferritin and the ferritin finally ferritin is formed and all ferritins together form the hemosiderin and they accumulate in the macrophages and they are used for the erythropoiesis, that is in the RBC forming again. So between the white pulp and the red pulp we see a zone known as marginal zone where the immune responses are initiated because it has high number of antigen presenting cells, and there is also a radial artery, that is lymphocytes of both T cells and B cells area. And next, all fluids which are remaining they drain by the efferent lymphatics. And the immunological function of spleen is mainly divided into lymphoid is a lymphoidic organ. It is used for initiation of immune responses mainly against the antigens and also microbes, and the immunological function is mainly done by the white pulp, that is it is a house for both T cells and B cells, and removal of macromolecular and also removal of some macromolecules. And hematological function is mainly done by the red pulp, that is removal of RBC and retrieval of ferrum from the RBC, storage of blood, and spleen in the fetal life also act as hemopoietic organ. So clinically, whenever the spleen is removed, that is known as splenectomy, that is forming the oval jolly bodies, that is the remnant of the chromatin. So normally what happens is from RBC should enter into circulation, and chromatin is a blue colored which is seen in spleen. It is normally removed by the macrophages in the spleen. So whenever the spleen is removed, that is spleen is not there, so what happens, those chromatins are present, that is forming the oval jolly bodies. So that is a clinical condition. In post splenectomy in the children, so whenever we remove in the children spleen, then what happens, there is risk of bacterial infections like Neisseria, meningitis, influenza, strep pneumonia. These are mainly capsulated bacteria. So normally the capsulated bacteria should be removed by spleen, but antibodies against them are produced. So whenever we do this post splenectomy, so this capsulated bacteria are not removed by a spleen so that they can affect them. Congestive spleen is nothing but the portal vein. Superior mesenteric vein and splenic vein together form the portal vein. So portal vein first forms the sinusoids and next form the central vein, and next it drains into hepatic vein, and next finally reach into the IVC. So the cirrhosis, that is the fibrotic nodules are formed in the liver, so they destroy the vasculature and increase the portal vein pressure. So thereby there is leading to the back pressure to the spleen and leading to the increase in size of the spleen, that is nothing but splenomegaly. So it is having some sugar dotted ferrum and calcium deposits known as Gandhi gamma bodies, which are seen mainly in the capsule. So Feltis syndrome, it is also having splenomegaly, rheumatoid arthritis and also neutropenia, that is increase in the neutrophils. So this is all about spleen, and next let us see about thymus. Thymus, so thymus is nothing but which is useful for first let us check out. T cell lymphopoiesis takes place from bone marrow. So the blood cells mainly originate in the yolk sac first, and next they shift into liver. This is all taking place in the fetus. So next they shift into liver. From there they shift into spleen and again into bone marrow. So by whenever we are alive, that is during birth time, that is not in fetus time. When we are in a baby time, then all our blood cells are present in bone marrow. So the bone marrow has a pluripotent stem cells, and the many cells can form, that is lymphoid progenitor cells and myeloid progenitor cells. So the lymphoid progenitor cells are further divided into lymphoid cells, that is forming T cells, B cells and natural killer cells, and the myeloid progenitor cells is mainly divided into three types, that is erythrocyte, megakaryocyte, that is by the name you can understand erythrocyte colony forming unit, and megakaryocyte colony forming unit forming RBCs and here platelets, and here G by M, that is granulocytes and monocytes which are mainly forming neutrophils, basophils, blue granules, that is granulocytes and monocytes, they enter into blood, and eosinocytes, that is forming eosinophils. So this is about this and the basic division we know, WBC divided granulocytes, agranulocytes. So granulocytes we have neutrophils, eosinophils, basophils, and non-granulocytes we have monocyte and lymphocytes. In monocyte and lymphocytes also granules are present, but these are not easily strained, so they are named as non-granulocytes. So the stem cell is nothing but which can multiply and maintain its own population, and erythroblasts form RBC. Erythroblast is a precursor, but later it is not left. So this is not a stem cell because erythroblast is a precursor and it is forming RBC, but this erythroblast doesn't remain for long time. But stem cell is that it can produce its new population and also maintain itself. So the zygote is a totipotent stem cell which can form every human body, so every cell in our body. Pluripotent stem cells are divided into, that's what as we discussed, myeloid progenitor and lymphoid progenitor. So from lymphoid progenitor cells, the lymphoid stem cells are formed and they enter the circulation and they are attracted to the thymus mainly by its product. That is what, let us see. So you can see this is a thymus gland. So it is of endothelium and also mesodermal in origin. Endodermal and mesodermal in origin. From endoderm, that is third pharyngeal pouch, and mesoderm in origin, that is it is having a double origin and it is 10 to 15 grams and 35 grams in puberty after it shrinks. So it is retrosternally placed and it is placed in front of a trachea. And whenever we have DiGeorge syndrome, that is 3 and 4 pouches, pharyngeal pouches are undeveloped, so that the thymus is not developed well and parathyroid is also not developed, so which results in cell mediated immunodeficiency, that is child may have repeated viral, fungal, bacterial infections, and because of parathyroid deficiency it may lead to hypocalcemia. And epitheliocytes are nothing but endodermal in origin, and they are having epithelial reticular cells, and mesoderm gives rise to bone marrow, and that is nothing but lymphocytes are produced from the mesodermal origin. So here you can see the structure of thymus, for example. So it is a capsulated structure made up of its capsule is made up of connective tissue. That capsule only move deeper and form the trabecular septa in between. So the outer layer is cortex, inner is the medulla, and you can see the outer epithelial cells over here. So the developing lymphocytes are present mainly in the cortex. So in the cortex we have our lymphocytes, and whenever they are fully developed they reach into the medulla. And so epithelial cells actually with other epithelial cells, they make pockets for the lymphocytes. So they are nursing them, so they produce a thymotaxin chemotactic for lymphoid stem cells. So as I said here, it is attracted to the thymus by product, that is nothing but thymotaxin. As the thymus is producing the thymotaxin, the stem cells are lymphoid stem cells are attracted towards them. And epithelial cells also process, and they have some filaments known as tonofilaments, and they also produce some others like serum thymic factors, thymopoietin, thymolin, and also thymosin. So these all are the substances which are formed by the epithelial cells of a thymus, and remember these epithelial cells are present in a cortex of a thymus. and are fully developed always reach the medulla. All the developing cells are only in the cortex of a thymus. And next, so in cortex, the lymphocytes are abundant, right, because they are the developing cells and they are thickly packed and stained dark, and also blood thymus barrier is present over there. But in medulla, those are loosely packed, lymphocytes are loosely packed, so they stain pale. And in medulla, the concentric epithelial cell aggregates are found in, so there is a special structure in the medulla known as Hessel's corpuscles, that is remnants of the epithelial tubes. So their keratin is deposited with the age. That means in old age there is more keratin. So the Hessel's corpuscles and keratin get deposited together. So blood thymus barrier, it is nothing but the tight junction in the vessels around the cortex with the double basement membrane, and also epithelium cells are flattened and act as barrier so that they can prevent the entry of antigens to the thymus. So blood thymus barrier is present mainly to prevent the entry of antigen to the thymus, so that thymus is not always disturbed by antigen, so that it can be functional in producing the T cells without having any obstruction. So thymus along with the basement membrane forming the primary lymphoid organ. So the maturation of T lymphocytes take place in the thymus, and thymus is endoderm derived, and lymphocytes from the mesoderm are forming the lymphoepithelial organ. And the capsule is mainly made up of dense irregular connective tissue, dark cortex, pale medulla, and the largest lymphatic vessel is the thoracic duct. Secondary lymphatic organ is the malt. So as we already discussed about malt. So by this we complete the histology of our lymphoid tissues. So there are different types of epitheliocytes, that is type 1 epitheliocytes are present in the inner aspect of capsule and also septa and blood vessels, and it also acts as a partial hemothymic barrier, and type 2 and type 3 are present in the outer and inner part of cortex. Type 4 are present in the deeper part of cortex, also in the medulla. And so they form a continuous spaces occupied by lymphocytes, as we already discussed, but we didn't discuss about the types, so now we are discussing. So the type 5 cells are present around the corpuscles of Hassel, and the cortical epitheliocytes are also described as thymic nerve cells, as we discussed, and they destroy the lymphocytes that react against the self antigens. And next comes to the macrophages are present in the corticomedullary junction in the and also present in the medulla, and the subscapular macrophages are mainly highly phagocytic, and the deeper lying macrophages are called as dendritic cells. And the corpuscles of Hassels, we know it is small rounded, present in the medulla, and they undergo degeneration, and they are pink stained hyaline masses, and they are bright pink with the hematocyaline, and they are known as, and they also contain degenerating macrophages. So let's see the functions of thymus. Mainly it is helpful in the lymphopoiesis, and DNA of the lymphocytes also undergo the numerous random mutations which different lymphocytes acquire in very large number of different proteins and react to them. 90% of lymphocytes formed in the thymus are destroyed within 3 to 4 days, and the remaining lymphocytes react only against the proteins which are foreign to the body and are thrown into circulation as circulating immunologically competent T lymphocytes, and they lodge themselves in the secondary lymphoid organs like lymph nodes, spleen, so where they multiply to form the T lymphocytes of their own type when exposed to the appropriate antigen. And next we have some hormones produced like thymulin from the thymus, that is thymulin, which mainly enhances the function of T cells and especially the suppressor cells, and thymopoietin, which stimulates the production of cytotoxic T cells. Thymosin alpha 1 stimulates lymphocyte production and production of antibodies. Thymosin beta 4 produced by mononuclear phagocytes. Thymic humoral factor, multiplication of helper and suppressor T cells, and also they influence the adenohypophysis and ovaries. Thymus and myasthenia gravis. So what is this? Enlargement of thymus causes myasthenia gravis. It is with the great weakness of skeletal muscle where the thymus is enlarged because there may be also tumor in it, and there is disturbance in the immune system. There are some proteins to which acetylcholine are released at the motor and plates and get attached. In myasthenia gravis, antibodies are produced against these proteins, rendering ineffective. So what happens in migraine is an example of which the immune system attacks our own body proteins. So this is referred to as autoimmune disease. Let us study MALT, that is mucosa associated lymphoid tissue. So it is mainly present in our respiratory system, lining the respiratory system, alimentary tract, urogenital tract, etc. So these are normally found as aggregates, which are referred as this MALT, and it is more surprisingly the MALT is more when compared with the lymphoid tissue of lymph nodes and spleen. Means the amount of lymphoid tissue is more in MALT, and the aggregations are mainly in the form of lymphatic follicles, that is nodules, and they also have a germination center, as we already know in our lymphatic node. The diffuse lymphatic tissue, which is mainly termed as parafollicular zone, is also present in the intervals between the nodules. And the nodules, diffuse aggregations of lymphocytes, all these are same according to our lymph nodes. And also the nodules are mainly made up of B lymphocytes, as we know, and the diffuse areas, that is in the parafollicular area, it is mainly made up of T lymphocytes. And the masses of lymphoid tissue are in very close relationship to the lining of epithelium of the mucosa. So they lie in the substantia propria, and the larger aggregations extend sometimes even into submucosa, and the individual lymphocytes infiltrate the epithelium and pass through it to form into the lumen. So the aggregations are mainly not surrounded by any capsule, and they do not have any connective tissue septa, but only supporting network of reticular fibers is present. And they do not receive any efferent lymph nodes and no lymph sinuses, and they do not serve as filters of lymph and the centers of but they are the centers of lymphocyte production. And the lymphocytes produced here mainly pass into the lymph nodes of the region, mainly through the efferent lymphatic vessels, and some lymphocytes may also pass through the overlying epithelium into the lumen. So the phagocytic macrophages, dendritic phagocytes are also present, and the post-capillary venules have some similar structures similar to the lymph node. So all these are similar to the lymph node. So this tissue in respiratory system, if it lines the bronchi, then large bronchi and trachea, then we call it as bronchial associated lymphoid tissue, that is BALT. So the mucosa associated in alimentary system is known as gut associated lymphoid tissue, and it is mainly present at the junction where the cavity of the pharynx, and the number of collections of lymphoid tissue is referred to as tonsils. And the largest are the right and left palatine tonsils, which are present on either side of our oropharyngeal isthmus, and it refers to the palatine tonsils. And in the midline collection is known as pharyngeal tonsil, and in the posterior wall of the pharynx this is present. And smaller collections are present on the dorsum of the posterior part of our tongue, this is known as lingual tonsils. And around the pharyngeal openings, then it is known as auditory tubes or tubal tonsils. And the small collections of lymphoid tissue are similar to follicles of lymph nodes, and they are called as solitary lymphatic follicles. And the larger aggregations, that is up to 10 to 200 lymphoid tissue, then it is mainly present in a small intestine. This is known as aggregated lymphoid follicles, also known as Peyer's patch. And we can these patches can be seen by naked eye, and there are about 200 of them which can be counted in human gut. The mucosa overlying them may be devoid of any villi and or may have a rudimentary villi. So the Peyer's patches always lie along the anti-mesenteric border of intestine and measure 2 centimeters to 10 centimeters, and both solitary and aggregated follicles can be seen, which are mainly increased in number and size in proceeding caudally along the small intestine, and most numerous and largest in terminal ileum. And also there are large number of lymphocytes and plasma cells in the connective tissue of the gut wall along with them. So the main role to play is processing of B lymphocytes similar to T lymphocytes in thymus, but at present there is no much evidence. So keeping in view about the respiratory elementary epithelia come in contact with numerous, or we know there numerous organisms, antigens, lymphatic tissue. So all these things are in greater communication with our lining. So in defense, they mainly act as defense mechanism against the antigens, microbes, etc. mainly by a follicle associated epithelial cells, also known as M cells. So these are helpful in defending them, and they lie overlying the lymphoid follicles, and they ingest the antigens present in the lumen of gut, then pass through the epithelium and carry the antigens to the lymphoid tissue. So in this way, these cells could help in stimulating the immune response against the antigens. So the B lymphocytes are present in the gut wall, which mature into plasma cells and of course producing the antibodies, especially of IgA secreted in gut lumen, which can destroy the pathogens before they can have a chance to invade the gut. And the palatine tonsils, so these are of right side and left side, and they consist of mainly diffuse lymphoid tissue in which the lymphatic nodules are present, and the lymphoid tissue is covered by stratified squamous epithelium which is continuous with the mouth and pharynx, and this epithelium mainly extends to the substance of tonsils in the form of several tonsillar crypts, and numerous mucous glands open into crypts, and the lumen of a crypt usually contains lymphocytes traveled into the epithelium, and the desquamated epithelial cells bacteria are also present in the lumen of crypt. So the palatine tonsils are often infected and causing the tonsillitis, and it is a common cause of sore throat. And the infections also lead to enlargement of tonsils in children, so that tonsils are focus of infection, and surgical removal is necessary, that is known as tonsillectomy. And pharyngeal tonsil is also a mass of lymphoid tissue in the posterior wall of nasopharynx, and in the midline it is covered by epithelium. In children, the pharyngeal tonsil may become hypertrophy and referred to as adenoids, and resulting swelling may be a cause of obstruction to breathing. Child tends to breathe through the mouth, and this may turn to other abnormalities. So this is about malt mucus associated. That's it. So by this we complete histology of lymphatics and lymphoid tissue.